It's a funny old world when a man can just turn into a woman by saying, "I'm a Sheila now, mate." Well, I've got an even crazier example. When a swamp can turn into a coral reef just because a scientist says so. In this video, we're going to take a road trip to show you some genuine environmental destruction which nobody, or at least nobody in the Greens or the Labour Party or the WWF, do anything about because, well, they can't use it to control you. But we're also going to search for some of this crazy land coral on the Great Barrier Reef. And spoiler alert, I'm going to show you some coral reefs which are totally destroyed and will never come back. But let's go to the beginning. You've doubtless heard that the Great Barrier Reef is not only destroyed by climate change, but also by farmers. So what do you do if you're working for a science organisation that's been saying that the Great Barrier Reef has been destroyed by farm chemicals, etc., but when they actually go and measure them, the chemicals, even with the most ultra-sensitive equipment, they end up with the big zero. It's just not there because the Great Barrier Reef is a long way away, maybe 100 kilometres in many places over the horizon. In other words, what do you do when you've actually proven that the reef is not damaged by farmers? The answer is simple. You just define all ecosystems between here and the reef as Great Barrier Reef ecosystems. So mangrove swamps, seagrass beds, but even freshwater swamps on the land are Great Barrier Reef ecosystems. And you try to justify that because, well, there might be some critter that swims from the swamp out to the reef, and if you get a bit of pesticide in the swamp, well, then that must be damaging the reef. Pretty sneaky.
Wicked, tricksy, fierce.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that I'm exaggerating, but this is actually throughout all the major documents about the threats to the Great Barrier Reef. So, for example, poor water quality, particularly elevated levels of fine sediments, nutrients and pesticides continues to have a detrimental impact on the Great Barrier Reef ecosystems. The greatest impacts are on freshwater, estuarine, coastal and inshore marine. So freshwater. The primary threat to the Great Barrier Reef is climate change, but poor water quality is also a threat, especially for the freshwater, coastal, etc. Pesticides frequently occur at concentrations that exceed protection guidelines for freshwater ecosystems of the Great Barrier Reef. Subtext there, actually, they can't measure them out on the reef proper. But anyway, you can see freshwater ecosystems are now part of the Great Barrier Reef. Now, when you think about the Great Barrier Reef, you think coral and fish and maybe turtles. But heck, if a bloke can turn into a Sheila just by saying so, why can't a swamp turn into a coral reef? I mean, I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? I'm actually feeling like a new person, liberated from the confines of facts and logic. Why can't there be a reef on land? All right, I'm going to go to the centre of the reef, which is actually now on land, and I'm going to take a road trip to check out this centre of the Great Barrier Reef, which is at a place called Kalen. Now, while I'm on this road trip to find the land coral, I thought I may as well kill two birds with one stone and show you some examples of some genuine problems on the land. Feral animals, noxious weeds, which are actually far more serious than anything that the reef is facing. Yes, amongst the frivolity, there is a serious side to this video. But before we get serious, so I'm here near one of the wetlands coral reefs near Townsville. And I got to say, no coral here at all. It's all been devastated, I think. But anyway, the way that the scientists link it is they say that pesticides might go into the water, and even though they're always in really small concentrations, that might affect the algae in the water, and then the fish might eat the algae. And because the snapping handbag crocodile now might be able to catch the fish, which now won't swim out to the Great Barrier Reef, then that kills the Great Barrier Reef, or something like that. Anyway, I travel further south and I've now travelled hundreds of kilometres on this new Great Barrier Reef and not a single coral. Has it all been devastating? But I see a whole lot of weeds. For example, this is Lucina. It totally takes over some areas. All weeds. Introduced by the CSIRO, actually. It went a bit wrong. And there's some lantana, my weed of choice. On the old school Great Barrier Reef, the one that's actually underwater, there are no weeds, but I can show you vast areas of this new reef which is in very bad shape. Well, we still haven't found any coral, and I'm thinking I know why. You see, this lantana is a noxious weed, and it's just taken over in large areas, especially down these creek lines. And I'm wondering whether it's this and the other noxious weeds that have killed all the coral up on these land-based ecosystems. You see, out on the old school Great Barrier Reef, the one that's actually underwater, there are no noxious weeds, and there's not a single feral animal like you get in this country. I reckon that's it. I reckon that's why the corals, it probably is under there if I dig down. And then I'm almost sure I can see coral ahead. Yep, that's got to be the new type of land-based coral. And it looks huge and so colourful. No, it's just the old gumloo vegetable truck. But heck, if a man can be a Sheila and a freshwater swamp can be a coral reef, why can't an old maple leaf truck be a coral? And I finally get to Caelan, the centre of the Great Barrier Reef, and I'm going to meet Stephen Andrew, who might know why there are so few corals on the land. He works on a huge problem of feral pigs, which are utterly destructive, especially in this area. He's a professional pig shooter who's turned into a Queensland politician, so instead of shooting pigs on the coral reef, he now metaphorically shoots politicians in Parliament. And we head off to see some pig damage on some of the freshwater Great Barrier Reef swamps and wetland, and I try to ignore what looks suspiciously like a bullet hole in his door.
That was a very unfortunate situation where I had a big heap of pigs running downhill. I had me swag.
Well, we might just stop him there. But this is North Queensland. Even the politicians are down to earth around here. Stephen, what are we seeing around us here? It looks like utter devastation.
So we're in a lowland region that is coming off cane paddocks into the swamp. This environment is all part of the high tide marks where all the clams, crabs, all the small fish and all that, they all come up in here. It's a coastal area, coastal low-lying area. What's happened here is the pigs have come in here when it's wet, when it's rained, or when the tides have become big, and they've dug up to kill and destroy and eat all those different organisms, all those different mollusks, and all that different crustaceans. It's devoid of it. It's taken away. It's gone.
How many pigs are you talking about?
Hundreds. There's hundreds, literally hundreds.
I noticed up back a bit that along the river line especially, there's a lot of noxious weeds as well. Is that a big problem along here?
It's everywhere, and that's another reason. They will eat that, they'll carry that on their fur. You know, the way when they walk through it, the mud sticks to them. They actually walk past the seed gets stuck to the mud, and then when they dry out, when they rub it on the trees, bang, there's the noxious weeds.
So I estimate that the government spends about $500 million a year, every year, to save the Great Barrier Reef. If I could give you guys and, you know, all the farmers and the people here $500 million every year, what could you do about the pig and the noxious weed problem?
That's outrageous. I can't believe that they would spend that much money on something that nobody on this earth could even change.
But what would you be able to do here?
Oh, look, we could clean this up. We'd have all the feral pigs taken in control. We'd make sure that anything like the feral cats, the feral noxious weeds, that'd all be under control.
Stephen, if you hadn't shot those 100-odd pigs, what would this wetland be like?
So they tear up all the sides of the banks. Any of this type of vegetation, they'll rip it out. Most of this will be just mud. And then the frogs, the little birds, any of the natural birds and the native birds, the waders, they all get eaten, destroyed. Everything does, even the ducks, the whole lot.
Because the pigs were shot out, this wetland is picture perfect. But from the pictures that you see from lots of pig damage in lots of areas, It was a mess just a little while ago. And the sad thing is that too many parts of this countryside are badly damaged by pigs. And that is certainly great work on this wetland. Sorry, coral reef. It might not have any coral, but it is beautiful. Now, many of my listeners will know that I've been asking for some quality assurance audits to be done on the reef science institutions to make sure they confront contradictory evidence about the reef and other issues.
Why are you against the proposition of better quality assurance?
Oh, I'm not.
Stephen Andrews has been among quite a few Queensland politicians who has been in favour of checking the reef science. Now, I want to spread the love and say that there are many others, especially in this state, because we have a lot of sensible people in Queensland. After all, we had the biggest majority that voted against the voice referendum. So you can see that there are some real problems which are generally being totally ignored. And by this stage of my road trip, I'm starting to wonder if I will never find the corals on these land-based ecosystems of the GBR. So I asked Stephen. But I don't see much coral around here. So is there a problem with the coral here?
There's no coral here. That's an absolute nonsense. That's a very desperate justification to try and keep access to that $500 million.
Doesn't sound good. So we head for the Caelan pub, and there I'm told of a secret place many miles from here that I need to go to, near the top of the Great Dividing Range, and they reckon I'm guaranteed to find coral, but I'm told I could be in for some real bad news. With a feeling of great foreboding, I head off to the place called Big Bend. Well, we found it. There is coral on the land on the Great Barrier Reef. But I got to say, I'm totally devastated because you see, this coral, it's all dead. And I've got to reappraise my life actually, because I've been saying that the Great Barrier Reef is in wonderful condition, and yet all I see around me is death and dead coral. It almost want to weep. Lots of coral fragments here. Piece of acropora. Now they reckon acropora is killed by climate change, and I guess they were right. This acropora, it's dead. There's no doubt about it. You can see that this was smothered by sediment. It was obviously from farmers back in the Devonian age a few 100 million years ago. Bloody farmers. My goodness. If only they'd had reef laws back then, none of this would have happened. And seeing all this dead coral, it's like seeing an old friend dying.
Exactly like me seeing my family slowly dying of something.
Now, being serious, this is actually the only permanently killed coral on the Great Barrier Reef. Yes, coral gets killed out on the reef, and there's always a big hoo-ha whenever that happens, but it recovers. Now, in contrast, as we've talked about in this video, there are huge areas on land where the native flora has been totally replaced by weeds or has been rooted by pigs, and some of that damage is permanent without some sort of human intervention. Yes, I decided to have some fun here, but we have to start worrying about some genuine environmental problems which we are presently ignoring, and we've got to bring our mad scientists under control.